Hi, I'm Randy, and I'm the Cheap Audio Man. Here at the Cheap Audio Man, we don't feel like hi-fi equipment, your first stereo or something, should cost more than your first car, which in my case was a 1979 Dodge Aspen RT. It was in Sprite Orange, and it had a gray racing stripe and a fin on the back, huge chrome bumpers, and it was awesome, and I wish I still had it. So today we're talking about audiophile terms for beginners. A lot of vernacular, a lot of words out there, terminology that may be confusing for some people that have never heard it before. Don't feel bad. Nobody came out of the womb when they were born knowing about CD transports. It's a learned skill. Learning about and some of the terms are just kind of wonky anyway. So grab a cup of coffee, sit down, and let's talk about some audiophile terms for beginners. Most systems, when I say most, almost all, because even if they don't have these separate components, they still have a iteration of them, even if it's a powered speaker or if it's an integrated type of a product. So you're going to need an amp, you will need speakers, and you will need a source. So you can use an acronym like SAS, SAW. There's another way you can do it, but we're keeping it clean here. There's an A and then two S's. Okay, so speakers, most of us probably know what speakers are. They contain multiple drivers. A driver is simply the little speaker. So big speakers made up of multiple drivers or multiple speakers. So you may hear people say driver. That's just the actual speaker inside the speaker. You may hear people say crossover. Crossover network is simply sending the right frequencies to the right driver. High pass filter sends the upper frequencies to the tweeter or the mid-range and the tweeter. Low pass filter sends the low frequencies to the woofer or woofers. A band pass filter takes out the middle, so it takes out the high and the low and sends that to a specific driver. You don't often hear about bandpass, but if you do hear about a bandpass filter, that's it. It's cutting off the top and the bottom. Speaking of frequency ranges, oftentimes you will hear this is rated down to, and normally it's a 30 hertz or 40 hertz or 50 hertz. That's low frequencies. That is the base. So most frequencies that are audible go between 20 hertz up to 20,000 hertz or 20K. Voices, the mid-range acoustic guitars are in 600. Voices are around 1,000 to 2,000 hertz or 1K to 2K hertz. All right, let's talk about sources. A source can be a record player, a CD player, or transport, and a CD transport is nothing more than a CD player that has a digital output. We'll come back to that. It can be a streaming box like the Bluesound Node 2i or a Raspberry Pi. It's anything that goes into your amplifier or your power amplifier. Some sources have a volume control, like some DACs. A DAC is a digital to analog converter. Anything that has digital files, phone, computer, television, has a DAC or digital to analog converter in it. They're not always optimized to reproduce music. Oftentimes they're just put in there. So some receivers that have DACs almost always sound better than your TV or your laptop or what have you. There's standalone DACs that you can purchase from companies like SMSL, Topping, Shit, a variety of places that you can get an external DAC. There's a lot of terms that can be used to describe how a speaker sounds, and they can be confusing if you're not familiar with them. People will describe a speaker as being warm, as being bright, as being neutral, as being fatiguing, and a neutral speaker really just means that the speaker is not going to color or change the sound of the recording. Now, there's other factors that go into that, as in the amp. The amp can color the sound as well, but a neutral speaker, for the most part, is not going to be coloring the sound either from a bassy perspective or from a trebly perspective or from a mid-range perspective. It's neutral, and as the name implies, it will reproduce the sound as close to how the artist intended the track to sound. Okay? A warm speaker. A warm speaker has a tendency to have emphasis on the mid-range as well as the bass. And it might not be as much as an emphasis on those two, but maybe the treble area is what some people call rolled off. And that just simply means it's less pronounced as the other frequencies, bass and mid-range. A bright speaker, and oftentimes bright is used in kind of a negative connotation, but bright means that the emphasis is on the treble or the upper regions of the frequency response. I use the term lively, and it's a way that I use, because I don't necessarily think bright is a great way to describe speakers, because bright carries that negative connotation. So I use lively. So it just, when I say lively, it just means that the speaker has a little bit of excitement on top. Maybe that treble region is emphasized more than the other regions. Fatiguing is a term used, and it often coincides with a bright or a lively speaker. Fatiguing means that there are frequencies that are emphasized that can lead to people not wanting to listen anymore because their ears actually hurt with certain frequencies. And as you turn up the volume, it can make it not be a great experience. So I particularly am after speakers that are not fatiguing, because personally, and for I think the audience, I want y'all to be listening to a speaker that you can listen to all day, or you can listen to without it hurting your ears. Let's talk about power. Most people have heard the term watts. If you're at all interested in hi-fi or stereo or home theater, most people have heard the term watts. And watts is a power rating for an amplifier or a receiver. What I will tell you is, don't believe the hype sometimes. What that means is, more often than not, manufacturers, especially in the home theater realm, overstate what their actual power ratings are. A true power rating that is reliable has two channels, and a channel is left and right, or rear, or surround, whatever it is. It means that it's not just one channel, not just one speaker. It would be two speakers powered, and whatever the power rating is at 1% or below total harmonic distortion is how amplifiers and receivers should be rated, but they're not. You'll go to your local big box retailer, you look at the side of the receiver, or sometimes amplifier, and it'll say like 120 watts, and it'll just be big, 120 watts. And if you look, it'll be like, it doesn't even always say one channel driven, it'll say at 10% total harmonic distortion. Well, when distortion happens, it can ruin your speaker, and distortion can happen at 5 watts, 10 watts, 20 watts. So whenever that distortion starts to happen, that's really where they should be rating their product. And if it's at 10% total harmonic distortion, you can bet that the actual usable power is much less than what is put on the side of the box. There's another thing, is bigger is not always better. I know for me personally, when I was first getting into the hobby, I just wanted the biggest power, because I associated that with being good. The reality is that oftentimes the amount of power that me, you and I are listening to at a given SPL, sound pressure level, and that just means how loud it is. So the amount of power it takes to get our speakers to a listening level that most people would consider to be pleasant and even sometimes loud is much, much less than what people think it is. Oftentimes it's a few watts, 2 watts, 5 watts, 10 watts, depending on your speaker parameters. And speaker parameters would include sensitivity and resistance. And those to me are the two most important specifications on a speaker, because the higher the sensitivity and the higher the resistance, the easier it is to drive or power those speakers. So a speaker with a 90 dB sensitivity with 8 ohms is easier to drive and will be louder than a speaker with 85 dB sensitivity and 4 ohms. So at the same given power, the higher sensitivity speaker will be louder than the lower sensitivity speaker. Resistance has to do a lot of times with how much current your amplifier has, but a good rule of thumb, higher the sensitivity, higher the resistance, the easier it is to drive that speaker or power that speaker, and the less power one would need to get it to that listening level, and really to get it to a really uncomfortable listening level. Amplifiers. Amplifiers, receivers, power amplifiers, they all do the same thing, and that is to put sound, transport the sound from your source to your speakers. A true power amplifier does not have volume control, and that's why one would need a preamp, and a preamp just sorts out all the sources coming in, and that could be CD player, a DAC, what have you, and it has a volume control. A true power amp has no volume control. An integrated amplifier does have volume control, and in this price category, that is what most people are going to see. They're going to see either receivers or they're going to see integrated amplifiers. And an integrated amplifier, the only thing it means is that it has a preamp built in, so it's managing all your inputs, CD player, your TV sometimes, other things, and it is controlling the volume. Those are most of the time in one piece. So you don't have to buy a separate power amp. You can, but if you buy a separate power amp that does not have volume control, one will need to control that volume somehow. And that can be done through a DAC or through a preamp. Integrated amplifiers can also have a digital to analog converter built in. Most receivers out there today have a DAC built in. So you can take a digital signal from a CD player or from a television or from an Apple TV or Chromecast or whatever it is, and you can hook it right into the receiver. It will do the digital to analog conversion for you. Some receivers and some amplifiers also have streamers involved, and a streamer is grabbing data, signal, music from the cosmos of the interwebs and transforming that into sweet, sweet music that you can play through your speakers and enjoy with your ears. Okay? Not all integrated amps have a DAC in them. Integrated amps will always have volume control, and sometimes they will have a way to manage the inputs. Most receivers have a DAC and the ability to control and manage the inputs. Most people that are interested in hi-fi know what a CD player is. And a CD player is something you put a CD into, hook it up to something else, and then you listen to a CD. I got really confused when I started coming back into the hobby, and really when I started listening and watching more higher end videos, what a CD transport was. Come to find out, a CD transport is nothing more than a CD player without a digital to analog converter in it, and then they charge you more for less. Okay, I'm painting with broad strokes, but a CD player has what are called RCA outputs on the back, and most people are familiar with it. Generally, it's a red and a white little circle. You put a cord in there that has a little spike on the end and then a little surround, and then you plug it into your amplifier or your receiver and turn it on and you listen. With a transport, there are no RCA outs, so there is no internal DAC in the CD player. So one must always, with a CD transport, connect it via a digital cable, which can be an optical cable or a coax cable. And it gets even more confusing because the digital coaxial cable looks an awful lot like an RCA cable, but they're not the same. So a coaxial digital output often has an orange interior. So RCAs will have a red and a white. A digital coaxial output will have an orange. And when you connect a CD player via digital output, whether it be optical or coaxial, one will have to input that into a DAC, digital analog converter. Now remember, a digital analog converter can often already be inside your receiver or your integrated amp. But if you don't have one, you'll need a DAC, and then you'll need to connect that via RCA into your receiver, integrated amp, or power amp. I know it's confusing, but do it a couple times, watch a couple videos, and you'll have it. Here's the interesting thing about a CD transport. The purpose of a CD transport is to obviously spin the CDs and get the data off of it. And there's some other digital magic that goes on. But also to circumvent what are oftentimes inferior DACs in a CD player to get a better sound. You can use a lot of products as a CD transport. So if you bought a nice DAC and you don't want to depend upon the DAC in your CD player, there's a lot of devices out there that will do the very same thing and work as a CD transport. A PlayStation 3 will work as a CD transport. Why? Because it has a digital output. So you can take that digital output and put it into your DAC. Blu-ray players, DVD players can also do the same thing. If you were looking to buy a low-cost or used Blu-ray or DVD player to use as a CD transport, always check the back. And on the back, it needs to have a digital output, and that will either be an optical or one of those orange digital coaxials. All right, to summarize this, when you're putting together your first hi-fi system, you're going to need speakers, you're going to need a source, and you're going to need an amp. SAS. Or you can do it the other way. A with two S's. Okay? Now, with a source, it can be a DVD player, it can be a CD player, it can be a television, it can be a Apple Music, no, Apple TV. Apple TV can be a Bluetooth receiver. We forgot to talk about Bluetooth receivers. We'll do that later. That needs to go into some type of amplifier. That amplifier could be a regular power amplifier, which remember doesn't have any volume. It can be an integrated amplifier, which does have volume control and sometimes can have a source in the form of a DAC inside it. Okay? That goes into your speakers. Your speakers can be neutral, which means kind of even Steven, warm, which means rolled off treble, lively or bright, which means a lot more treble, or fatiguing, which means bad treble. It's going to hurt your ears after a while. All right? Power. You don't need as much as you think you do, and most of the time what you see on the side of the box is not true. Okay? So, I hope you like this video. I know it's a lot of information. I'll probably be making more of these, but please like the video if you remotely gain some type of value from it. And please don't down thumb it. I'm not telling you what to do though. If you want to, you can. If you like what we're doing here at the Cheap Audio Man, please consider subscribing. I have a lot of videos out there, so there's probably something out there that you may be interested in. If you want to support the channel, there's a few ways you can do it. Most of the links that I have in the description are affiliate links, and what that means, if you click on it and you buy something, I get a commission off of that. It's small commission, and it doesn't cost you any more, but I do get a commission off of it. I also have a Patreon, patreon.com/cheapaudioman. Every Sunday night we do patron-only Zooms, and we also have a patron-only Facebook group for the most part. And I'm going to read a testimonial because I know a lot of times if you're unfamiliar with something, you're probably not going to look for it. But if there's a testimonial, then you may consider it. And that testimonial is from one of my patrons, Steve Z. He's over in Raleigh, North Carolina. Sometimes he goes down to Florida. And he says, I I don't even watch the sound, or I don't even listen to the sound on Randy's video. He moves around a lot, and I enjoy that. I don't know what he's saying. That's what Steve says. Okay. You can also sign up for Amazon Music HD for free. You want to try some high-resolution music for free? Click on the link in the description. Scroll down to the bottom. Click Try HD. You get 3 months for free, and I get $2. I also have merchandise, coffee, stuff like that. Coffee mugs, not coffee. That'd be cool if I had coffee. So don't binge watch anything on Netflix or Hulu or HBO. Binge listen to anything. CDs, streaming services, vinyl records, cassette tapes. Enjoy yourself. Binge listen and fill your soul with happiness. And with that, I'm Randy. I am the Cheap Audio Man.